Morning, councillors. Please be seated. A warm welcome to everyone joining us this morning in the room and those online as well as members of the public and press who are watching. If I can advise elected members that there will be comfort breaks and if necessary a lunch break. We will also confirm apologies now of those who are joining. We'll confirm attendance of those who are joining virtually and confirm any apologies.
Thank you, Provost. Can everyone hear me okay? If I could just remind all members who are in the chambers to speak as close as possible to the microphone. This will help with the sound. And just a reminder as well, it would be helpful if, when you're simply agreeing or noting a report, if you could not switch your microphone on, because that can also cause some technical issues. In terms of apologies, Provost, I've no formal apologies for today, unless there are any to come from the floor or online. We have no further apologies, so if I could just ask those members who are virtually online, if they could just indicate that they are present for the purpose of the public who are watching. So I think we have Councillor Peter Barrett.
Present.
And Councillor Angus Forbes.
Good morning, I'm here.
And Councillor Liz Barrett.
Present.
And Councillor Hugh Anderson. I think Councillor Anderson was maybe having some technical issues. And I believe we also have Councillor Neil Freshwater online.
Present.
Thank you. Are there any other members that are online?
Yes, Councillor Sheila McCall, I'm online.
Is that it now?
Thank you.
And Councillor Caroline Shires also online.
Thank you, Councillor Shires. And Councillor Anderson, I see you're now present.
I was waiting for the machinery to work.
Okay, right, thank you. Thank everyone, Provost. Oh, sorry, Councillor Allen as well. Do we have Councillor Allen? We'll see, Provost, if we can work out if there's any technical issues with Councillor Allen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott. If I can remind members who are in the room to only use the chat function in the Teams meeting, but to use the chat function to request to speak. If I can also remind members that in advance of today's group meeting, I indicated to group leaders that we will not be accepting votes by text, but we will obviously be doing it by Teams and in person. The Deputy Provost and I also intend to be very lenient in the application of the standing orders at this first full council meeting following the statutory meeting, given the number of new members, just to ensure smooth running of the meeting. If I can ask for members' agreement to vary the order of business to consider item 12.1 on the agenda at this point. Are members agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. The Scottish Liberal Democrats have nominated Councillor Claire McLaren to be appointed as a Bailey. Can we all agree Councillor McLaren's appointment as a Bailey?
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Andy Chan intimated his resignation as a Bailey on Monday the 20th of June, and the Scottish Conservative Unionist Group have nominated Councillor Chris Ahern to replace Councillor Chan as a Bailey. Can we agree Councillor Ahern's nomination as a Bailey?
Agreed.
Thank you very much, members.
And Councillor Ahern, please.
Thank you, members. We now move on to declarations of interest. Can I ask if members have any declarations of interest in items of today's business? Councillor Bob Brown. Thank you, Councillor Braun. Councillor Donaldson, please. Can you advise that's
Sorry, and that is indeed a non-financial interest. Absolutely right.
Thank you. Councillor Tom McEwen.
Non-financial interest in paper 7 as a previous member of Live Active Leisure.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McEwen. Councillor Brian Leishman.
Thank you, Provost. I'd like
Thank you, Councillor Leishman. So you'll be leaving the room for that. Thank you. Councillor Stephen Carr.
I have an interest in item 7 as a current director of Live Active Leisure.
So you'll be leaving the room for that, Councillor. Thank you. Councillor Andrew Parrott.
Non-financial in paper 6 as a director of Perth and Kinross. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Chris Ahern.
Non-financial interest in 6 as a director of Culture, Perth and Kinross.
Thank you, Bailey Ahern. And my apologies for getting your nomination right. Councillor John Rebeck. Okay. Can I just remind all members that you have to speak right into the microphone, because those participating in the meeting online are unable to hear councillors speaking on the floor. So it has to be about an inch away from your mouth for them to actually hear what is being said. And it's also important for the viewing public and those of you who might want anything printed in the press. So very important to speak right into the microphone. Councillor Sheila McCall.
Thank you, Provost. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Good. I am a member of the Integration Joint Board, and I'm not sure whether or not that constitutes a declaration of interest. Item 5. I would like some advice on that, please.
Non-financial, and I'll pass over to the monitoring officer to answer.
Thank you.
Is it coming through now? Coming through now.
I hear you.
Yeah. Councillor McCall, that's not a declarable interest that would preclude you from participating in the discussion at item 5.
Thank you.
Are there any other declarations of interest? No? Okay. Then members, we move on to item 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. Can I ask members if we can agree to approve the minute of the council meeting of the 27th of April 2022, noting the correction that was circulated to members in advance of the meeting? Are we all agreed? Thank you. Yeah, I'll pass over to the clerk.
Just to further clarify a small correction in relation to the minutes to do with the specific officer job title. To clarify, for the meeting of the 27th of April, Jackie Pepper was the interim chief officer for the Health and Social Care Partnership, and for the 25th of May, she was the permanently appointed chief officer for the partnership. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask members in terms of item 3.2 that we can agree the minute of the meeting of the 25th of May 2022? Are we all agreed? Thank you, members. Sorry. Councillor Drysdale, can you remember to put things in the chat, but I'll come to you now.
Thank you, Provost. One correction in relation to this minute, which is in relation to item 8, the motion on steps to mitigate the cost of living crisis. That was, whilst I was fully supportive, that was seconded by Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Councillor Drysdale. That will be corrected. Can we agree the minutes subject to that correction? Thank you very much. Item 4, outstanding business statement. Are there any questions on the outstanding business statement from members? I'm seeing no questions. Therefore, members, can we agree to note the outstanding business statement? Agreed. Thank you very much, members. Item 5 is the revision of the Perth and Kinross integration scheme. I'm going to invite Karen Donaldson, the Chief Operating Officer, to introduce the report.
Good morning, Provost and councillors. The integration scheme is the legal agreement between Tayside NHS Board and Perth and Kinross Council for the integration of health and social care in Perth and Kinross. As well as being a legal requirement to review the integration scheme every 5 years, this review also gives the parties the opportunity to ensure that the governance arrangements are up to date and fit for purpose. In Tayside, the 3 councils and NHS Tayside took a coordinated approach to the revision of the 3 schemes for Perth and Kinross, Angus and Dundee. Importantly, the council's Head of Legal and Governance, Head of Finance and Chief Social Work Officer have also been involved in the review process. First of all, there is no change in the functions which are delegated to any of the integration joint boards in Tayside. Nor are there any changes to those delegated functions which are planned and delivered on a pan-Tayside basis, although there is provision for agreed changes between the parties during the lifetime of the scheme. The annexes to the integration scheme in Appendix 2 of the report describe in detail the functions which are delegated and what this means in Perth and Kinross. Under the direction of the IJB, services continue to be managed operationally by NHS Tayside and Perth and Kinross Council. The Integration Joint Board has strategic oversight to ensure that services are being operationally delivered as directed and in accordance with the Strategic Commissioning Plan. The IJB also has strategic oversight to ensure that the services are operating safely and to the quality expected. There's no change to the voting membership from Perth and Kinross Council and NHS Tayside Board, each having 4 voting members. Where possible, officers have endeavoured to ensure that the 3 schemes in Tayside are the same, where it's appropriate to do so. There are some differences between the Perth and Kinross scheme and those which apply in Dundee and Angus, and these fundamental differences come from the current agreement between the parties on financial risk share and events in recent years following the Strang report, which require greater clarity of accountability and responsibility for inpatient adult mental health services. This is important because the Chief Officer in the Perth and Kinross Integration Joint Board will coordinate strategic planning for inpatient services for mental health, learning disability and drug and alcohol services across the 3 IJBs in Tayside, with NHS Tayside having operational responsibility for these services. Many of the changes improve the accessibility and flow of the document, and some other areas such as clinical care and professional governance and risk have been updated. And as mentioned already, there is now greater clarity about accountability and responsibility between the partners and the Integration Joint Board. The scheme has been out for public consultation with that feedback incorporated where appropriate. NHS officers are recommending approval by Tayside NHS Board when it considers the integration schemes on 30th of June. Thereafter, subject to agreement by all parties, the revised integration schemes will be submitted for final agreement by Scottish ministers. It may be necessary to make some final technical changes based on feedback from Scottish Government, and with your agreement, the Chief Executive would take these forward with the Chief Executive of NHS Tayside before publication of the scheme. I'm joined by some colleagues today who have been party to the revision of the scheme, and we're happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Operating Officer. Do members have questions on the paper? Bailey Ahern.
Thank you very much, Provost. My question is on the inpatient mental health, and I'd just like to say thank you to Jackie Pepper for the conversation we had yesterday, trying to clarify a few points. You mentioned the Strang report in your opening statement and about the transfer of inpatient mental health to NHS. And I was under the impression it was all of it. And at various points in this paper, it mentions various aspects of inpatient mental health, including the strategic part, which is, I understand, in several parts of this, back to Perth and Kinross IJB, but in other parts of it, it's not so clear. So my question is so to clarify, Perth and Kinross IJB control the strategic aspect of inpatient mental health, but obviously they're going to have to work with both the other two IJBs in order to produce that strategic direction, and then all operational. And I just wonder, has that changed since the initial Strang report and the initial pulling of the inpatient mental health from Perth and Kinross into the National Health Zone?
Jackie Pepper, answer the question, I believe. Chief Operating Officer.
Thanks, Councillor Ahern. In terms of the changes, there was a decision to move the operational management and responsibility for inpatient mental health services from the Perth and Kinross IGB, which at that time in the previous integration scheme sat with the Perth and Kinross Chief Officer and Perth and Kinross IGB. And that was a move dictated by Scottish, I was Cabinet Secretary for Health at that point in time. So the revised integration scheme provides the clarity that the operational responsibility and the management of inpatient mental health services remains with the NHS Tayside and the executive lead for inpatient mental health and learning disability services. The coordination of the strategic planning for mental health services, both at a community level and in terms of that the acute services, the lead partner role will be performed by the Chief Officer for the Perth and Kinross Health and Social Care Partnership and the IGB. But you're quite correct in what you're saying there, that if that's about coordination of strategic planning, that can't be done in isolation or without the collaboration of the other two IJBs and NHS Tayside itself. So there will require to be arrangements in place to ensure that those bodies are absolutely involved in the strategic planning process. Just if you think about the responsibilities of Dundee IJB and Angus IJB for their citizens and the population for which they are responsible, they will need to be involved, because the strategic planning and the plans that are being taken forward will have an impact and a positive impact on their communities, so their involvement is critical.
Thank you, Chief Operating Officer now.
Thank you. I think it's also important to clarify that the legislation delegates responsibility for strategic planning for mental health services to each of the three IJBs in Tayside. The role for the Perth and Kinross IJB is to coordinate strategic planning across Tayside. So strategic planning responsibility does rest with each of the three IJBs. The unique role for Perth and Kinross in this situation is that coordinating role with the other two IJBs. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tom Kewan next, please.
Thank you, Provost. The question I have is regarding section 15, which is dispute resolution on page 85. It invites the possibility of non-affiliated arbitration and also even the inclusion of the president of the Law Society. Does this actually incur costs, and if so, where do the costs sit for such a process?
Chief Operating Officer or Head of Legal and Governance?
Is that working now?
Okay.
Now we always know it's got to be hit twice. It's a fairly standard clause. It's an arbitration clause. This is a dispute resolution between the parties, so the costs of that would need to be shared between NHST and the council. It's a fairly standard arbitration clause, but I'm sure we'll never need to use it.
Okay, thank you, Head of Legal and Governance. Councillor Angus Forbes next, please.
Thanks, Provost. My questions on the some of the comments that have been received. So my view on this is very few people know that the IGB actually exists and less know what it does. And I think some of the comments that have come through would back that up. And I wonder if there's any plans to do any kind of communications or publicity to let our residents understand what it's all about.
Thank you. The comments have been passed to both the Health and Social Care Partnership and to the parties, in other words, relevant teams within the Council and NHS board. And there is a plan to improve our communication, both on social media, the website, and also in terms of other information that will go out to relevant groups. So I think that was really welcome feedback, and clearly there is still work to be done in terms of improving communication. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Jackie Pepper also wishes to answer this point.
Thank you very much, Provost. It was really just to say that, considering the responses that have been received, communication and plain English and visual representation of arrangements is clearly a theme throughout the comments, Councillor Forbes. So certainly as a Health and Social Care Partnership, we'll be picking up on the themes of communication and engagement that are raised within the consultation responses.
Thanks, Jackie. It's reassuring to hear that, because there are quite a lot of people making that point. So I'm really pleased that you've noted it and it will be dealt with. Thank you.
Councillor Crawford-Reid.
Thank you, Provost. A comment just to follow up on what Councillor Forbes has said. I have spoken to.
Okay. Okay. Okay, Councillor Reid. Councillor Reid, can you speak directly into the microphone that people aren't hearing? Okay, can you put it off and on again, please, so people online can hear? Thank you.
Is that better? Well, it might not be, because you can possibly hear me. That may. Anyway, so did you hear about my comment about no GP that I've spoken to, and I've.
We heard. Thank you.
Maybe it's a veto. A&E services in Perth and Kinross have been diminished dramatically by consultant bodies in Ninewells. And I note that our IJB has actually got the delegated authority to deal with A&E in hospitals. I do know that facilities and resources have been given specifically to Perth Royal Infirmary and have been consumed by the consultant body in Ninewells. Can I be assured that now that we have got control over A&E facilities, that we're going to be able to reverse, or the IJB can reverse that and stop the usurping of their power by the A&E consultants in Ninewells?
Okay, Jackie Pepper, I think, and Chief Operating Officer, Jackie Pepper first.
Thank you, Provost. Really, just to give some reassurance to Councillor Reid that only last week I had engaged in discussions with various consultants, particularly consultants in medicine for the elderly around admissions and delayed discharges, and certainly the issue of capacity and resources at the PRI site was part of that discussion. So I can only give reassurance that as Chief Officer, I'm engaged in those discussions.
Thank you, Jackie Pepper, Chief Operating Officer.
Thank you, Provost. The points you're raising aren't really a matter for Council today in terms of looking at the integration scheme. These are matters for the members of the Council on the when these matters are discussed on the Integration Joint Board, and I'm sure your points will have been heard today and taken forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Operating Officer. Councillor John Duff.
Thank you, Provost. My question is in relation to 9.20 of the scheme, which is to do with the risk sharing arrangements. I understand previously that Perth and Kinross had a different risk sharing arrangement than Angus and Dundee, and I wondered if that's still the case and what the implications are for Perth and Kinross. Thank you.
I'd like to confirm that the financial risk share arrangements that we had previously in terms of May deal with underspends being passed back remains the case. So the scheme for Perth and Kinross still refers to May, whereas the Dundee and Angus schemes refer to Will. So that remains the same. There are some other changes within the risk share agreement that clarify the approach to the calculation of set aside and the basis for the calculation of contributions under the risk sharing agreement. But again, I reassure members that the Perth and Kinross integration scheme retains May rather than Will. I hope that clarifies the situation for you, Councillor Duff.
Okay, thank you, Chief Operating Officer. I'm not seeing any other indications from members for asking questions. Therefore, I will invite the Leader of the Council to move the report.
Thanks very much, Provost. Provost and fellow members, health and social care integration helps the Council deliver its vision for working together to support people in Perth and Kinross to lead healthy and active lives and to live as independently as possible, with choice and control over the decisions they make about their care and support. The Perth and Kinross Integration Joint Board has existed since 2016. It is the body set up following agreement between the Council and the Tayside National Health Service Board to integrate health and social care for adults in Perth and Kinross in accordance with legislation. A growing, ageing population and an increasing proportion of people living with complex needs have the combined effect of increasing demand for health and social care in Perth and Kinross. In that context, it is even more important that the governance arrangements around our Integration Joint Board are up to date and remain fit for purpose. Today, members are being asked to consider and agree the revised integration scheme, which is effectively the legal agreement between the Council and Tayside NHS Board for health and social care integration. The integration scheme specifies that the Council and Tayside NHS Board each retain 4 voting members on the Integration Joint Board, which also has other community partners. It is this body which agrees the strategic commissioning plan that sets the vision and priorities for those who need the support of health and social care at the same time. The revised integration scheme reflects that the fact that we are now 6 years on from its inception, updating many of the points which were relevant only in the first few years. It also reflects our local experience of integration and seeks to clarify and strengthen the governance arrangement. While there is no change to the list of services which are to be delegated to the Integration Joint Board, the integration scheme restates the Council's commitment to deliver health and social integration. A Tayside-wide approach has been taken to reviewing the 3 integration schemes in our area, and this has involved officers from the 3 councils, NHS Tayside and the 3 Health and Social Care Partnership, for many months. I would like to thank officers for the work they have carried out to ensure the best possible integration scheme is presented today for members' consideration. Finally, I would also like to take this opportunity to thank members of the public, service users, public partners and staff who engaged in the public consultation exercise on the draft revised scheme. I commend this paper to the Council.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. The Deputy Leader to second, please. Can you switch back?
I'll start
off and
again.
on? Thank
Yeah.
you. And I just stop you there briefly while we see if we can get this microphone to work.
Hello, can you hear me now? No. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Start again. Provost, having served alongside your good self on the Integration Joint Board throughout the last 5 years, the last 2.5 as chair, I'm conscious how often reference has been made to the original integration scheme documentation to resolve governance questions and any uncertainties. It is therefore vitally important that this proposed new integration scheme is as clear as possible and is written in as plain English as possible. Happily, in my view, it is. I have been reassured, and we have all been reassured today by senior officers, that the risk-sharing agreement between NHS, Tayside and Perth and Kinross Council still does not force these parent bodies to effectively fully underwrite all health overspends and social care overspends respectively, but that any overspends are dealt with by negotiation. As I say, I take comfort from that and from the appropriate, comprehensive and thorough consultation exercise that has taken place, and I'm therefore happy to second the paper.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Leader. Councillor Colin Stewart, do you have an amendment?
Thank you, Provost. Can you hear me? Thank you, Provost. I'd like to also thank officers for the huge amount of work that I'm aware has gone into bringing forward this revision to the integration scheme behind the scenes. I know it's been a long process, and I'd like to align myself with the comments of the Deputy Leader in terms of the risk sharing agreement. I don't want to propose an amendment which will actually amend the integration scheme, but just to add on an additional request, which is that the Leader of the Council write to the Scottish Government to request that the necessary secondary legislation be amended to allow the public partners, that is service user representatives, carer representatives, third sector representatives and so on, that the legislation be amended to allow the public partners to have voting rights on integration joint boards. This has been clearly the direction of travel in recent years, and I know that yourself, Provost, the Deputy Leader and Councillor Duff will also have heard these pleas over and again at the meetings that you have all attended of the Integration Joint Board. If accepted by the Scottish Government, this would be a positive step forward in terms of recognising the huge contribution that public partners make to the business of the Integration Joint Board, with the that derives from the knowledge, vast knowledge and experience that they possess and bring to the questioning and decision making and advice that is provided to the get to decisions of the Joint Board, and I commend it, Councillor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stewart. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Cuthbert. Okay, thank you. If I can come to the Leader of the Council, please.
Thank you, Provost. I'm happy to accept that and to write on behalf of the Council to the relevant authority after taking advice from my Councillor Stewart gave me sight of the amendment. and I discussed it with someone who has more knowledge than I do on the Integration Joint Board, and I think you will hear from the seconder of the motion on this now.
Can I come to the Deputy Leader, please?
Thank you, Provost. I just want to associate myself completely with the sentiment expressed by Councillor Stewart. Throughout the last year or two of meetings on the Integration Joint Board, there has been a common theme, a desire to have to not have a two-tier system on the Integration Joint Board, but to give full voting member status to the public partners who give very wise counsel, and their contributions are entirely appropriate and well considered. And so I would hope that the Scottish Government would listen to our views and take this matter forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Leader. Do members have any comments on the paper? I'm not seeing any indications of comments. Therefore, are we content to agree the paper? Thank you, members. Now, members, we move on to item 6, strategic priorities for culture and sport, next steps. I'd like to ask Fiona Robertson, Head of Culture and Communities, to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Provost. Councillors, can you hear me? Great. Councillors, this report asks you to approve work to develop new strategic priorities for culture and sport for the next 5 years. We've done a lot over the last 5 years, but we've also not been able to achieve everything that we would have wished to have done because of COVID.
Sorry, Fiona, sorry to stop you. Deputy Provost Barrett has a point of clarification.
Thank you, Provost. A number of us declared an interest in this paper, and I'd be grateful if our Head of Legal could clarify exactly what position we should take with regard to this paper. It is of interest to us all, and it seems beyond the requirement for all of those who've declared an interest to actually leave the chamber. And I'd be grateful if the Head of Legal can clarify what position and or role we should take. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. My understanding is that because of the high level nature of it, there is no need for you to leave the room. However, the monitoring officer can detailed answer.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Yeah, I've given advice yesterday because there's 2 papers on the agenda today. The declarations of interest need to be made by those on Live Active Leisure in relation to the paper concerning Rodney, because they have a connection by virtue of their legal obligations as directors. There is no established connection for everyone else who is participating in the board, and indeed for LAL members in relation to this particular paper. So no one is required to declare an interest or leave, and everybody can participate fully in the discussion, debate and vote.
Thank you very much for that clarification. If we can return to Fiona Robertson, please.
No. Okay, so as I was saying, this is a fairly straightforward report asking you to approve the work that we will carry out over the next few months to develop new strategies for culture and sport. We've done a lot in the last 5 years. COVID did get in the way of that. You are all aware, I think, of the big projects and achievements that we've made, but I do want to just briefly mention some of the other achievements from our delivery partners and our communities. So, for example, we now have 13 community sports hubs. We had 5 in 2016. We have enormously high levels of participation by girls and young women in sport. The Cranach Centre has been doing incredible work with young people, despite the catastrophic fire that it faced last year, to give local young people employability chances. Pitlochry Festival Theatre set up a befriending service, a phone line during lockdown to reduce social isolation. Culture Perth and Kinross got Click and Collect. The library books up and running again during lockdown. The Hamish Henderson Festival, the fact that we're welcoming the Royal National Mod to Perth later this year, and much more. So I think lots to celebrate. The council's role in that is as enabler and setting the conditions in which our communities and delivery partners can flourish. We have a lot more to do in the 5 years to come. We do face financial challenges. The process for consulting and engaging with communities and partners is set out in the report. Councillors, I'm happy to take any.
Thank you very much. I have a question from Councillor Robertson, first of all, please.
Thank you, Provost. Could you say a little more about the community sports hubs and the difference they have made in the communities where they've been established? And also something about the difficulties there are in trying to set them up in other areas.
Yes, I'll answer the question briefly and happy to provide more information after this meeting, Councillor Robertson, if that's useful. I think the difference that they have made is that they have, in particular, not in all cases, but in particular cases, brought together school sports facilities with wider communities and made those facilities more open and accessible for the communities that live around school buildings. There is work to do, which we have discussed with Sports Scotland and Live Active Leisure, about how we get community sports hubs up and running in areas where perhaps communities, parents, local sports clubs are less mobilised and less active, and in areas where that kind of facility, that kind of initiative can bring wider benefits in terms of health improvement and overall participation in physical activity, which is what it's all about.
Thank you very much. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Provost. My question is about, I understand that there's a growing number of children who are starting to wear glasses from an earlier age and having to, because of the devices they use, and probably not participating in sport. And I was just wondering if that is something that would be incorporated into the report, how we address it.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Williamson. I don't have the answer to that, but I will find out and come back to you.
Thank you. Councillor Leishman.
Firstly, thank you very much for the report. Reading the report, it's excellent to hear that in Perth and Kinross we have so many voluntary clubs and community sports hubs. I would like to ask in what way professional clubs, bodies and organisations can be involved and help shape the development of strategies for sport in Perth and Kinross.
Yes, we do work with the governing bodies and professional bodies from time to time. They come in and out of focus depending on the priorities and the things that we're working on. So, for example, Councillor Leishman, the SFA have worked with Live Active Leisure, and I think part funded, part supported the football development officer, which is one of a number of development officers that we have across the area. We have one for curling, one for school sport, one for cricket, if I remember rightly. Scottish Swimming have been quite involved over the years with the development of PH2O and will be in the future. So they are amongst many delivery partners that we work with and will work with to prepare the new strategy.
Thank you. Councillor Cook-Alley.
Is that working? Yeah. On item 5.2, it says that the consultation is going to happen in the summer of this year. Is there any concern that because sport is especially so seasonal, that might yield some quite different results than if you did it in, say, the winter? And is there possibly some concern that some sports might end up, the run over the summer might get prioritised in terms of the responses that you get compared to some that don't?
I would hope not, and we will engage and consult using a variety of different mechanisms. We will be running focus groups. We will be using the local action partnerships, which are our local community planning boards, to talk to wider communities across the summer and into early autumn. We will do follow-up and more structured questionnaires with individuals and groups if we need to. There's never an ideal time to do a consultation. It can never be as completely joined up as you would like it to be, but I'll take your point on board. It's a good one. Thank you.
Thank you, Head of Culture and Communities. Can I remind all members to please ensure your devices are muted? Councillor Donaldson. Councillor Donaldson, sorry, I don't want to, you can't be heard on the by the people online. Can you switch your microphone off and on again, please?
To you, is that okay now? Right, I just want to ask, so we have certainty going forward. Has the possibility of a merger of Horsecross and Culture Perth and Kinross now been ruled out? It's not precluding joint working together in a number of areas, but I think it's important for both organisations that they have a certainty after the last 5-6 years.
You will be considering a report on transformation in the council later on in this agenda, Councillor Donaldson, and within that, as you know, it alludes to the fact that we will need to review and look at our delivery structures for transport, which are currently via the ALIOs. As you are aware, there is a best value duty and obligation on councils to regularly review their ALIOs and make sure that they are the right delivery model. In terms of your question, that's not a question for officers. That's a policy decision, a political decision for the council vis-a-vis the future of Horsecross and Culture Perth and Kinross. My job and the job of my team is to give councillors impartial advice on any future decisions that they might make in that.
Thank you, Head of Culture and Communities. Councillor Waters next, please.
Thank you, Provost. Thank you, Provost. Not going.
I think you might need to bring it closer to you as well. Can people at home hear? Yes, they can. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. Just a question regarding disability sports, whether it's through the competitive level or just general well-being, and delivered through competitive clubs, or just as disability clubs delivering bocce or something like that. Will that be included and looked at specifically? Because sometimes there are special needs, and they will often sometimes need to meet during the day, and we potentially have campuses which are not as available during the day. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I did ask officers to be concise with their answers. It is appreciated. Councillor Peter Barrett.
Thanks, Provost. Really pleased to see paragraphs 4.5.4 and 5 in the report, and the reference to mitigating the impact of poverty and cost of living for people, and also addressing inequalities in more strategic integrated ways, as well as paragraph 5.5, which states that the health sport and physical activity should be central to our public health and wider strategic response to current and future health challenges. I just wondered whether the Head of Culture could explain, how that will be translated into actions and a reality. And there's also a kind of spurious reference in 5.5 to a paragraph 3.5 which doesn't exist.
Thank you. Apologies for the missing paragraph. I will check that out and come back to you, Councillor Barrett. On your question about removing barriers to participation, there's a number of different elements to this, not all of which there's time to go into now. Briefly, I think to say, though, part of the answer is about how programmes, cultural and sports and physical activity programmes are designed and developed so that they are actually appealing to and engaging with a broader range of audiences and users. And there is more to do on that. We do have more to do on that. In terms of cost of living, that is a tricky one because the organisations that we fund in many cases rely on commercial income. Many of the programmes and activities that they are responsible for delivering are expensive to mount, and they involve an element of financial risk. But I think a number of things that we collectively need to consider are mass participation events like the big city centre festivals that we hold or that we support elsewhere across Perth and Kinross, many of which include free events. Our commitment to City Hall that it will be free, including the Stone of Destiny, will be free for everyone to come and see. Pricing policy is important. That's something, certainly in the case of the ALIOs, that we ask them to think about and consider very carefully. All of our ALIOs and most of our funded partners offer concessions. So all of those things are in the mix, but clearly the cost of living crisis is going to be something that we'll have to keep firmly in mind in terms of how it may be stopping people participating in these services which bring so much joy apart from anything else, but also contribute to people's wider well-being in all sorts of ways, as well as supporting our local economy, which in the long term will be part of how we address cost of living crisis.
Thank you, Councillor Braun.
Provost, if I could just come back on that. Thanks very much, Fiona, for that response, which is really helpful. I think looking at the report, there's an awful lot in terms of the consultation and engagement, where I think the Equality Strategic Forum could provide really important and valuable feedback, as well as sense checking.
Yes.
Councillor Braun.
Thank you, Provost. I'm referring to paragraph 5.3 regarding library services. I just wonder, do we have a means, or do we keep a tally of the footfall at libraries, and are we seeing a decline in number of people using libraries? I ask the question because obviously we are moving further and further into a digital age. Most of the books in the library and even newspapers are now available online. So are we seeing that fall in people actually using libraries now?
I didn't catch was the first part about overall footfall in libraries, Councillor Braun? Footfall in libraries has declined in Perth and Kinross as it has nationally and UK wide. I think on average, I can't give you the precise figure, apologies, but on average, footfall in our libraries across the piece is just over 600,000 a year. I'm taking the COVID element out of the dimension. We have around 66,000 library members in Perth and Kinross. It's useful to know, though, that quite a small number of those are active borrowers, which is people who take out a book a certain number of times each year. So footfall is declining, but other ways in which we use libraries, including accessing their services online, is increasing. And that's one of the things that the current libraries review is looking at. Libraries are absolutely fundamental to the fabric of local communities. They're really important community assets, but we are going to have to think creatively and differently about what they do in future and how they're operated.
Thank you, Head of Culture and Communities. I now come to the Leader of the Council to move the report.
Thanks very much, Provost. Councillors, it is my belief that the step change in culture and sport has been remarkable over the last decade, not just since 2016. If we are to maintain this level of ambition and achievement, we will face challenges and hard decisions, some of which we'll come to later in this meeting. However, our sporting heritage and thriving current sports scene are a huge part of what makes me so proud to serve Perth and Kinross. Our cultural story is at the heart of Scotland's story, symbolised by the return of the Stone of Destiny, and we have truly raised our game there too. I'm also pleased to see the growing connections between culture and sport, notably the celebration of St Johnson's success at Perth Theatre earlier this month. Councillors, I'm happy to move this report.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Provost. This paper sets a timeline and process that will underpin the development of a crucial element of this Council's plans for the next 5 years and beyond. Our flagship projects, investing in a brand new high-spec, state-of-the-art leisure complex PH2O, and the redevelopment of City Hall to house Scotland's Stone of Destiny, underpin this Council's level of ambitions in this area. But the strategic direction of this administration will be about more than this. We fully recognise just how important sport participation is to the collective health and well-being of communities, including and especially those facing health or financial barriers to participation. We also place significant importance on developing and maintaining our cultural presence, from the performing arts through appreciation of our heritage, to educating and informing learners of all ages through our libraries. In these economically turbulent times, our job as a council will be to ensure we get absolutely the best value we can for the public pound through effective governance structures and via full and effective consultation with the public going forward. Happy to second.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Leader. Are there any comments on the report? If there are no comments on the report, are we all agreed? Oh, Councillor Duff, a very late comment there. You can come in.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, I couldn't quite get the chat function to work as quickly as I could. Thank you. In the Head of Culture and Communities introduction, she mentioned two organisations which are very close to my own heart, the Crannig Centre on Loch Tay and the Royal National Mod, and I'm very pleased with the support and assistance that PKC gives to both of these organisations. Obviously, culture and sport are very important services delivered by the Council, and I welcome the detail of the report. Many of the key strands mentioned in the report include projects commenced under the previous administration: City Hall, PH2O, UNESCO City of Crafts and the return of the Stone of Destiny, and I look forward to the delivery of culture and sport services in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Duff. I am not seeing any other comments, therefore, members, can we agree the paper? Thank you very much. I'm going to ask members who've declared an interest in item 7 now to leave the room, please. Okay, thank you, members. We now move on to item 7, Rodney Centre withdrawal of gym and fitness services by Live Active Leisure. I'm going to allow Fiona Robertson, the Head of Culture and Communities, to introduce the report. We also have Paul Cromwell, Chief Executive of LAL, in attendance as well. Fiona Robertson.
Hear me now? Yeah. Councillors, this report sets out the key factors you need to weigh up in deciding whether or not to grant Live Active Leisure permission to withdraw services from the Rodney Centre. And the factors that you need to consider are summarised in paragraph 5.7 of the report, and Paul Cromwell, as the Provost has said, is here to deal with any detailed operational questions that you may have for Live Active Leisure in reaching your decision. As I said, vis-a-vis the earlier report, later on, you will be looking at the transformation programme for the Council and how we need to make best use of our buildings and other assets in the challenging times that lie ahead. In considering this particular matter around Rodney, you will also want to bear in mind that the business case for PH2O, for which Council approved funding earlier this year, is partly predicated on the closure of Rodney and the consolidation of the city centre sport and leisure offer under two main roofs, if you like, two big buildings, one being PH2O, the other being Bells. So, councillors, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have on this report.
Thank you, Head of Culture and Communities. I have a question from Councillor Drysdale first.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you, Fiona, for your report. I do have a couple of questions, but I'll just ask the first one now, and if I may come back later on after everybody else has asked any questions. At 4.6, the paper lists those included in the stakeholder engagement exercise. No reference is made to any prior engagement or consultation with individual regular users of Rodney or indeed Bells. Is that an omission, or was there in fact no prior consultation with members? If there was prior consultation with members, at what stage in the process? Thank you.
I'll pass that question to Paul Cromwell, Councillor Drysdale.
Paul Cromwell,
good afternoon, councillors. Can everybody hear me?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Yes, and certainly in terms of the consultation that was completed, that included individual customers in terms of Bells. Rodney customers were not consulted as part of that process, and really what we're providing is an alternative to Rodney within the city centre boundaries. So therefore we have engaged with Rodney customers, and you'll be aware that last November when we announced the project that we had a survey to engage with our Rodney customers and our wider fitness customers about the project. And over a 2-week period, we received over 900, the best response we've had, I have to say, in terms of a survey, over 900 responses in terms of engaging on that project, of which approximately 20 were negative in terms of saying they would obviously rather Rodney was retained. So whilst it wasn't included in that 2019 consultation process, we've fully engaged in terms of the facilities going forward, and we believe that the facilities that we have are significantly improved and obviously within the city catchment. I think it's also worth noting that whilst Rodney is currently our principal fitness facility, if we look at the actual mapping of usage and membership of Rodney, it's across the whole of Perth. It's not just limited to one area. So whilst I accept that there might be additional distance for some people to go to Rodney on one side, then on the other, then it's going to be closer to people because it's got such a broader postcode base, if you like, across Perth in terms of usage. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I'm now going to come to Bailey for the next question.
Thank you, Provost. Thank you, Provost. Can people hear me through the microphone? Perfect. My question is about section 4.5 of the report. In the section 4.5, it's written that LAL must formally request permission to withdraw from a property. Further down the report, it mentions that the LAL effectively made that decision to withdraw from Rodney on the 26th of August last year. So 2 questions. One is, on what date did LAL notify this local authority that they wanted that permission? And then secondly, why has it taken almost 10 months for that to reach this chamber for our consideration? Thank you.
Okay, I think that's a question for officers. Head of Culture and Community.
Councillor Bailey, the LAL board made a decision in August last year, as you know, to repurpose the Bells Sports Centre. and it flagged up at that stage that that would necessitate withdrawing from Rodney. That was not entirely new, either to the council or to Live Active Leisure. The eventual withdrawal of Live Active Leisure from Rodney has, as I've mentioned before, been flagged up to council whilst the development of the business case for PH2O has been underway. So there has been a long-term mutual understanding between the council and Live Active Leisure that eventually withdrawal from Rodney would be required to support the business case for PH2O. Now, what became different for Live Active Leisure in the last couple of years was COVID. Its financial situation was extremely challenging. It needed to think about its financial long-term sustainability. And as part of that, it made the decision to invest in bells. In terms of your question around the process and the procedure and why it took the period of time that it did for this decision to come to the chamber, that's not for me to comment on, because as you are aware, this decision is in front of full council as a result of a motion passed by council earlier this year. That's why the decision is here. The formal request for permission to withdraw services from Rodney came to the council, came to officers in early May this year, the 5th of May, if I recall, though I will check that for you, or thereabouts. Rodney was subject to an options appraisal by Live Active Leisure, and Paul Cromwell, when he attended scrutiny committee on the 29th of November last year, referred to the fact that LAL would be carrying out an options appraisal to see if there was any way that they could retain occupancy of the building, albeit by delivering other services from there. Now, LAL were delayed in carrying out that options appraisal because of staff shortages and the many other things that they had to do emerging from COVID. So as a result, the options appraisal was carried out later than ideally any of us would have wished. So those are the reasons behind the timescale. The process I've explained, but I need to be clear, I think, with councillors about the fact that the withdrawal from Rodney was something that was built into the business case for PH2O and has been flagged to councillors at all key stages whilst the business case for PH2O has been prepared.
Thank you. Bailey Ahern.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yeah. My question is regards it. We make a decision today to take it back into Perth and Kinross Council control. Is how much is it going to cost us to maintain it as an empty building, assuming it's going to take a few months or maybe longer to sell it or do whatever we want with it? And are we going to be spending money to refurbish it?
Head of Culture and Communities. Sorry, Fiona, they're not hearing online. Can you switch your microphone off and back on again, please?
Can you hear me now online? Great. I'll just start that again, shall I? They say on Mastermind. In terms of the costs of maintaining it as a vacant property, Stephen Crawford, who is on the call, will respond to that, Councillor Ahern. A lot of work will need to be done around looking at potential options for using the property in different ways. Some of that work has already started as part of our One Public Estate approach, just to investigate what other options there might be. In terms of maintaining the property in the longer term, I think it is worth flagging, again, as it says in the report, that the condition of the building currently is assessed as satisfactory, but it will require, if the council retains it, on our books, around £275,000 worth of investment over the next 5 years to do with some essential maintenance and repairs. Stephen will answer your question on ongoing property costs.
Thank you. Stephen Crawford, Head of Property.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. The report states that the annual running costs in terms of property costs for LAL were in the region of £30,000 to £40,000 If we bring the building back to ourselves, that figure would likely not change. I think the question is, are we planning to invest in the building? No, we're not planning to invest at the moment. What I would like to identify to the members is Lal, as with charitable status, we did not pay business rates. When the building reverts to the council, we have a 50% relief for the first 3 months, and then only a 10% release thereafter. So we're probably, and I think the rateable value in the report, or the rateable costs, were in the region of £26,000. So we will when it reverts to the council, the property costs will probably be in the region of £40,000 a year. Plus we will have the rates burden as well. So a total of approximately £60,000. But the report recommendation was to then look at options for potentially selling it or alternative uses.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Colin Stewart.
Thank you, Provost. Mr. Crawford has just said something which prompts a question, but I'll maybe come back in. I see that Councillor Duff question in, so it might be in relation to the same point. My question is, in the business case for PH2O, at what point in time was the closure of Rodney assumed or required?
That's not specified in the business case, Councillor Stewart, and that's partly because as we were writing the business case, one of the unknowns at that stage was the start date for construction, the start date for completion. The key principle in the business case, and the business case is sitting at outline business case at this stage. That's the stage that you approved in February when you allocated £90 million to the project. It's entirely normal that some of the key milestones, including where appropriate withdrawal from existing facilities, may still need to be worked up. What changed for Live Active Leisure, as I've said, is COVID. So we hadn't had any detailed discussions with Live Active prior to COVID about when withdrawal from Rodney would take place, partly because PH2O was not a confirmed project. But from Lal's perspective, the need to support their financial well-being, their long-term sustainability, brought the issue into focus sooner than I think it would otherwise have done.
Thank you. We have Councillor Duff next, please.
Thank you, Provost. My question, I think, is for Mr. Cromwell. I just wanted to ask, if the move of the gym and fitness services to Bells are not on a kind of like-for-like basis, but we're expanding the offering in terms of gym and fitness at Bells, and I think also bringing everything under the one roof compared to what it is just now. And just look for Mr. Cromwell's comments on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, you're absolutely right. What we're absolutely doing is modernising the fitness offer that we provide our customers. The current customer experience in terms of fitness is fragmented across principally Bells and Rodney, where if you want to do strength and conditioning or core strength work, you have to go to Bells. If you want to do CV and resistance, you have to go to Rodney. If you want to do spinning, it's at Bells. If you want to do different types of group fitness classes, you go to Rodney. So in terms of the offer, it's quite limited. Rodney has served as well over the years, but anybody that knows Rodney knows it's quite constrained in terms of size. It's also quite constrained in terms of layout, and anybody that's used it will know that if you are engaging in a group fitness class, which are very popular, you have to actually walk through the gym area to actually get there. So there's a range of limitations. The reception area is very small. So all of these things will be addressed in terms of Bells. So all our group fitness offer will be within the studios, which the report says is refurbished. The old cafe area, we've refurbished was the existing strength and conditioning area. And the former coaching hall will make an integrated gym. Now that will also include the partnership work we do with the Perthshire Rugby Club, but it'll be a fully integrated gym which will include functional fitness, resistance, CV, as well as strength and conditioning and core. So what we're providing is, in terms of fitness, which is obviously the focus of Rodney and what we're talking about today, is completely different. Not only that, the equipment, for anybody that's had the opportunity to come down for a pre-opening tour, will see that the space that we have there in terms of people with mobility issues is far better than what we have at Rodney. We have change in place standard toilets and changing at Bells. We have very accessible space given the actual layout of Bells. It's part of the wider activity hub that is the North Inch. You know, so there's a whole range of significant improvements by relocating our fitness offer to Bell Sports Centre. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for Drysdale for. I think you might need to switch it off on again.
Hello. Colleagues from across the chamber have already asked one of the other questions I had around the whole time frame here and the business case approval that was given by Live Active Leisure in August 2021. So I won't repeat these questions, although I do have concerns in that area. Can I ask Live Active Leisure, so Paul Cromwell, I guess, whether any consideration was given last August to the possible, probable loss of wider economic benefits to Perth and Kinross as a consequence of visitors to the city and surrounding areas when hosting national events at Bells? And was any consideration given to the negative impact on parking on residential streets in the North Inch and Muirton area of my ward when the decision was taken? Or should that have been something that in hindsight should have been passed to this council to consider? Thank you.
Mr. Cromwell.
Yes, the impact of events was obviously part of the detailed study that we completed in 2019. So the information is there and has been provided previously in terms of that. And I think it's been noted that events, the competition now for events is significantly increased with wider sport and infrastructure that's developed in other areas around Perth and Kinross. Some of the feedback we got was that Bells was not accessible by the community because of the significant amount of events that it held, particularly at weekends. I think what we have going forward is the balance. The other reality is that the main arena is the principal events area for Bells Sports Centre. And if we look back in history, Scottish Gymnastics, for example, are one of our largest governing bodies that we work with in terms of event delivery. The majority of their events now that used to historically take part in the coaching hall are now in the main arena simply because of the growth, the need for significant seating space, which we only have in the main arena for spectators. So the reality is over the years, we've seen a decline in the occupancy of the coaching hall because of the flexibility, space and spectator seating that's available within the main arena. So what we have now is the best of both. We still have the main arena, which is available for events. It's available for our local communities during the week. And we'll have the outstanding destination fitness facilities, which will absolutely regenerate and rejuvenate that facility in terms of the different range of clients, and particularly our local community that will use that going forward. And of course, we're going to hopefully benefit from both, i.e. different customers, which I think was mentioned earlier, that might come to an event or to see an event. We'll have also a look at the further facilities that we have in terms of fitness. So we've got that cross-selling experience as well as part of that. In terms of the parking, obviously Bells is close to the city centre. It's serviced, I would argue, better in terms of public transport than Rodney. It's on cycle pathways. It's part of the North Inch. It still has a car park. And of course, like any other organisation, we are constantly encouraging customers in terms of active travel plans. We speak to our events about using park and ride facilities, so we make sure that we don't have any issues locally, and being in touch with our local community and our neighbouring roads and neighbours is something that we've always done in terms of maintaining relationships. But we feel actually there's an improvement there that we're going to be able to provide as part of the development of Bells. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Collins-Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you, Provost. Just to follow up on what Mr. Coffey, the head of property, said. My understanding was that the rate reductions for all of the allios were a fixed amount. So by reducing the footprint of LAL as an allio by returning Rodney to the council, is there an offsetting reduction elsewhere, or is there a reduction elsewhere that offsets the increase to the council by taking on Rodney?
Stephen Crawford. Sorry, Head of Culture and
Sorry, is Fiona going to answer that, or am I?
Fiona's going to answer it, I think, by the looks of it. Thank you, Stephen. Sorry, Fiona, they're not hearing you online again. Sorry, I think Fiona, can you move it a bit closer?
Live Active Leisure do operate 6 sites across Perth city centre, of which Rodney is only one.
Okay, thank you. I'm now going to go to the Leader of the Council to move the motion.
Thanks, Provost. Councillors, this is obviously a difficult decision for us all, and I respect the views expressed on all sides of the chamber. I know they stem from our shared passion and commitment to providing the best services possible for the people who we've elected to serve. Equally, though, I respect the very difficult decisions for LAL to ensure its long-term financial sustainability whilst maintaining services across the whole area. I'm particularly mindful of the legal duties of the LAL board in this respect. Rodney is a much-loved building, but it does have its limitations, and I would not wish this.
Councillor Lane, please, can you switch it off and on again, please? Thank you.
From where will I start again, or did you not hear?
I think they heard the first part, it cut out.
I think we heard everything until the cutout, so there's nothing we missed.
Sorry, Councillor Lane, it's not.
Can you hear me? Okay. I am particularly mindful, I'll be able to do this without a script soon. I'm particularly mindful, this is the third time I've said this. Okay, I'm particularly mindful of the legal duties of the LAL board in this respect. Rodney is a much loved building, but it does have its limitations, and I would not wish this issue to cloud the £90 million investment which this council is making in sport and leisure through PH2O, with LAL as our valued delivery partner. I note that officers are actively investigating alternative uses for Rodney and will return with options for the property subcommittee to consider later this year. I therefore move this report.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Councillor Sheila McCall to second the report.
Happy to formally second the report, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor McCall. Are there comments? Yes, there are. Councillor Peter Barrett first, please.
Thanks very much, Provost. And to coin a phrase, I'm particularly mindful that when we discussed fitness facilities being provided at the Bell Sports Centre. At the previous council meeting, councillors were advised that that was an operational matter that we couldn't interfere with. And we were similarly advised in paragraph 6.1 of the report today that we can't withhold permission reasonably from LAO to withdraw the services from the Rodney. I have to say that both of those pieces of advice cause some perplexity to members of my local community when it comes to what councillors can do with regard to ALIOs. I think there's certainly a lack of understanding in the community. In any event, I'll be sorry to see the Rodney cease to be a gym in my ward. It was for a long time the jewel in the fitness crown of Live Active Leisure and its predecessor Perth and Kinross Leisure, and even before that Perth and Kinross recreational facilities. It reached its parlour 30th anniversary and is now sadly going to fall short of its 35th, which would have taken place in October of this year. It certainly has been a facility that in the past I've argued and fought to preserve in the face of budget cuts at a time when it was only, or when it was Perth and Kinross Leisure's only premise generating a revenue surplus. But COVID, we know, has forced the demise of many gyms, and the climate emergency drives the reduction of our building and carbon footprints, making action imperative. Investing in new facilities comes at the price of closing others. And whilst recognising that imperative, I would like to see the potential for the Rodney to be used as an annex accommodation to Knoll Primary School. Can it, for example, deliver a viable solution for nursery and infant school accommodation, relieving accommodation pressures and increasing the current cramped and crowded outdoor playground space that the school has? I raised this with the Director of Education and Children's Services, and whilst I acknowledge that there may be issues to overcome with managing a two-centre and split campus school, and there's also the unknown costs of bringing up the building to the required energy standards as well as conversion costs, I do believe that it presents a unique and perhaps a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to address Knoll Primary School's spatial restrictions and deliver on local and national priorities for education and children and young people. So I would like to see that fully appraised and included in the options for future use that the officers are being recommended to bring back. Convener, as a council, we may win awards for our community asset transfer process, but we achieve precious few of them, and I don't want another vacant former public sector building on the Perth's left bank left empty and being a focus for antisocial behaviour. Provost, I'm very happy to move a motion for the option for the future use to include nursery infant school annex to Knoll Primary School to be included in the options that officers bring back, but would hope that the leader of the council would simply agree that this is a common sense way to proceed. But I say happy to move that if that's not going to be incorporated into the report.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. That would be an amendment to the motion, having had a motion moved. Can I get clarity on whether you have a seconder, and then I'll go to the Leader of the Council to see if you wish to incorporate.
I would second that amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Liz Barrett. I will go to the Leader of the Council to see if he is inclined to incorporate. Mr. Leader. Okay, thank you. The Leader has agreed to incorporate that, Councillor Barrett, so it is therefore incorporated.
Thank you.
Councillor McCall, sorry. Are you happy with the incorporation?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, Councillor McCall. My apologies. Okay, so we now have the motion as moved by Councillor Lane with the incorporation of Councillor Barrett's amendment. I have a further comment from Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Provost. As I alluded to when seconding the previous motion, it is vital that this new council's strategic direction over the next 5 years is based on solid foundations created by full prior consultation with all relevant stakeholders. The answer Mr. Cromwell gave to my earlier question revealed that this was not the case with this project, in that there was no prior consultation with Rodney users, although there was after the decision was taken.
Indeed, although Live Active Leisure approved this project last August, based squarely on the requirement to move out of Rodney, it has, as we have also heard this morning, taken my motion to Council in March to even bring debate on the matter fully into the public domain. My firm view, and I'm sure that of many fellow elected members across the chamber, is that there ought to have been much more thorough prior engagement with facilities users and affected communities at the beginning of the process. In the next paper, Council will consider today our financial strategy. The extremely challenging financial situation we as a council face will be laid bare, and I fully accept the financial challenges that Live Active Leisure have faced. Difficult and probably unpopular decisions will require to be made, and I will not shirk from that responsibility, which I now bear as Deputy Leader of the Council, to be involved in making these decisions. We shall be open about the challenges, and we shall endeavour to take the public with us, learning lessons from the almost entirely negative reaction to this project across social media platforms and on the doorsteps in my and other wards during the recent election campaign. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Drysdale. Councillor Anderson, I've been advised that you are waiving. Do you wish to come in on this item? Councillor Anderson, you're still muted. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Okay, all right now.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, just I say this bit of Rodney brings back lots of memories to me. Came into council control about 1988-ish, a gift from General Accident. 92, 96, I was convener of Leisure and Recreation, and a lot of effort in our campaigns meant having a really beautiful Rodney area in our Britain and Bloom, Scotland and Bloom competitions, which we won. It'd be sad to lose that asset to the community, and I think possibly Councillor Barrett's suggestion that it could be used, linked to the school, would be an excellent idea of trying to beautify Bridgend area anyway. The west end of it still needs some work, but the east is totally based on, not totally based on Rodney Pavilion, but and the parkland all around about, and the walks, gardens. So there was just a comment that I have very good memories of Rodney, and hopefully it's not lost to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Members, can we agree the motion as amended? Agreed. Thank you. Members, I'm proposing that we take a 10-minute comfort. Oh, Councillor Angus Forbes.
Thanks, Provost. I wasn't exactly sure the right moment to raise this, but I can't be the only person here who is absolutely fed up with the sound quality that we're having both online and across the chamber. And I'm pretty confident for the last 5 years that I've been elected, we've had some kind of sound issues. And I wonder if you can try and get some resolution to this once and for all. I know we have engineers in regularly, but it doesn't actually seem to fix the matter. Maybe we could get an update on what the problem is and if it's possible to get it fixed and when it's likely to be fixed.
Okay, Councillor Forbes, I will pass this to perhaps the Deputy Chief Executive, Chief Operating Officer is going to answer this.
Councillors, we have had engineers and our supplier in working with us very closely, and every time the checks are carried out, everything is in order. So what has happened today has been temperamental, but there will be a post-committee meeting with our IT colleagues and our supplier to bottom this out once and for all. It's frustrating for all and it's not acceptable, and we will do our utmost to improve this for the future.
Thank you very much.
And if we can perhaps record an update on that part of the outstanding business statement. Thank you. Right, members, I'm proposing that rather than have a lunch break, since we're making good progress on business, that we have a 10-minute comfort break if members are agreeable, and we would resume at just after 1:45. Are members supportive of that, or would members like to break for a full lunch break at this point?
I say just keep going.
Happy to keep going?
Happy to keep going.
Resume at just after 1:45.
Provost, can we take a vote on this, please?
Okay, Councillor McEwen would like a vote.
It's okay when you're at home and online and you can go get your lunch.
That's fine. Okay, if I'm moving that we have a 10-minute recess. Invite Councillor Harrott to members who have returned from the ante-room. I wasn't expecting this to be too controversial, but I'm proposing that we have a 10-minute recess at this point as a comfort break. And Councillor McEwen is asking for a lunch break, which I'm also happy to go for. He's asking for that, to have a vote on that. So just to bring you up to speed on where we're at. Okay. I think we can just make this a procedural matter and go to an immediate vote on it. Well, we're just going to go. Well, we can't go for hands up. A very quick roll call. Right. Okay, we're going to compromise at half an hour for a lunch break. Okay. Are people content? Half an hour for lunch break. 1:10. 1:10 sharp, and we will continue business.